So what is streaming 2.0? Is it the big fix that independent artists have been looking for when it comes to getting paid more through their streaming platforms? Or is it another smoke and mirrors tactic from labels behind the scenes to make a cash grab? Well, as amazing as the marketing sounds around streaming 2.0 about how artists are going to get paid more directly from their fans, the reality is a little bit more bleak. And even worse, this whole thing of like, this is going to be the new revolution, is getting artists' attention and focus away from what actually matters and what you should be focusing on as opposed to Spotify. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what those things are and what streaming 2.0 actually is and how it's not what people claim it's going to be. So before you go ahead and accept this as the new music revolution, let's take a step back, pull back the curtain, and see what's really going on, okay? So first thing that we need to understand is what really is streaming 2.0. Streaming 2.0 it's like the idea of Web 3.0, right? Or Web 3 or whatever. The whole idea that we're going to that next stage in our evolution with streaming. And that sounds great. And that's why it's been so heavily marketed as like, this is going to be the solution we've all been looking for. So what is it essentially? They're trying to integrate subscription models within subscription models. That's fundamentally what's happening. They are saying, hey, you've got Spotify, right? Well, what if there was a way on Spotify, on the actual streaming app, to donate? You know, they don't have a system perfectly set up right now. Maybe it's like, oh, you put in points and you give the points away, or maybe it's you just sign up for a monthly subscription of $1 a month or $2 a month, $3 a month, and you support your favorite artists that way. This all sounds well and good. It's like, oh, cool, they're offering more platform, there's not more platforms, more technologies on their platform to get us streamlined support. So that our fans, if they want to give us like $2 or $3 a month, they can do it while they're listening to the song, while their interest in us is very hot and exciting, you know? So they're like, oh yeah, I love this new band or new artist that I found. This is going to be great. Let me support them $1 a month or $2 a month. That's what they're trying to sell as the reality of it. But let's take a step back for a moment. UMG, one of the biggest record labels, has been making some big plays. And one of the biggest plays that they made is they bought Downtown Music. Now, when it comes down to independent streaming, right, what do we rely on? We rely on distributors. So we rely on things like DistroKid, TuneCore, CD Baby, companies like this, because we just pay them a yearly fee, usually, and you can upload as many songs as you want onto digital service platforms, or excuse me, digital streaming platforms, and we just pay the annual fee and we're all set up. Well, what effectively UMG has done is bought this independent music distributor company that owns CD Baby. So they're buying a pretty decent share of the market because CD Baby is one of the OG companies, you know. DistroKid was kind of a modern, you know, people started like discovering them in the more modern age. CD Baby has been around forever. They're kind of like TuneCore. They've had a pretty good standing in the industry for quite some time now. And if labels are owning that, and now they're owning it kind of like how Live Nation owns independent venues. So what that means is, what will happen, let's use the Live Nation example. Live Nation will open a big venue, right? Whether it's a big theater, whether it's, you know, the stadiums, all that kind of stuff. There'll be a big Live Nation venue that will get all of the premier acts that'll most likely only go and play the Live Nation venues. What happens to the mom and pop venues? Well, they slowly but surely go out of business. But instead of just letting their competitors go out of business, they think, well, we've definitely got the mainstream audience tapped, right? We got all them coming to our Live Nation shows, but there's still an independent market that we could grab. So what they do is, instead of letting these mom and pop shops go under, they'll make an offer on them, and they will own silently these independent venues. Now, the problem is these independent venues will sometimes get good Live Nation acts, but usually not. And it gives this false impression to the consumer that if they wanted to not support Live Nation and they could go support some mom and pop local venue, they can't really do that because the mom and pop local music venue has actually been bought out by Live Nation, and they're just not advertising it as a Live Nation venue. So there is that to take into consideration, because that's fundamentally what's happening over here in the streaming world. So a monopoly is attempting to be established. Because if there's one thing that we know about Spotify, is we know that record labels have bought a lot of shares in Spotify because it's a publicly traded company. And why would they do that? They do that for influence. They do that for influence over Spotify. Now, they've used that influence to, for example, give their artists higher royalty payouts. So artists will get paid 0.005 cents on every stream as opposed to 0.003 cents every stream. So that's like the difference between the label-backed artist stream and the regular stream. But not just the label-backed artists, like the top Beyonce 1%. Even artists who are signed are not getting that royalty rate just because they're signed. It's the very, very top, like I mentioned. And like I mentioned earlier before that, UMG is one of the top record labels in the entire country. And in the entire world, if you think about it. But what nefarious intent might UMG have for buying out the company that operates CD Baby? Well, as you imagine, as you have probably seen happen in real time as an artist, features will get, what's the word I'm looking for? They'll get beta tested, and they'll have a small distribution of a new feature on Spotify. Remember canvases? Nowadays, anybody and their grandma can set up a Spotify, and all of a sudden now they can put a canvas behind their song. That used to be an exclusive, restricted feature to a small pool of artists. Okay, you see where I'm going with this? So because labels have this negotiation power within Spotify, they have in the past shown that the artists who are going to get the preferential treatment when it comes down to who's going to test out these new features, who are we going to test these new features on? We're going to test them on the biggest artists first. So you have UMG, who not only owns an independent music distribution company, but they have ties to influence by their shareholder position in Spotify. We're setting ourselves up for a little bit of trouble here. You're starting to see the issues with what's going on here, because what effectively can happen is twofold. One, UMG can argue and push to get that prime feature only available to their artists first until it's widely accepted. And what they're really trying to do is what I call the market share problem. What they're trying to do is they're trying to eat up as much of the market share of fans who will give monthly income to artists before they can allow the feature to be distributed down the pyramid into the other artists who don't have as much. And the problem with that is, with something like a canvas, that provided an aesthetic advantage. So yes, the label-backed artists had the cool canvases for a while, and then the independent artists who didn't have access to these features had basic old music players. But this is different. This is a monetary advantage. This is a money advantage, because think about it like this. There's so many people out there that are, one, willing to spend monthly income on an artist that they like, right? So you have to really have that rapport developed as an artist. And as independents, we have to do a lot of that through our email lists, our content, and the way we communicate with people. A lot of big established artists already have pretty raving fans. And so we have an opportunity in the current landscape to offer things that big artists aren't really offering. The whole monthly subscription thing is not as prevalent as you would think it would be across all the big major players. There's a few that are obviously doing it, but it's not an industry standard like you think it would be by this point in time. But they're trying to make it an industry standard where the artists don't have to do anything. It's integrated through Spotify directly. But what happens is the people who are willing to spend money per month on artists are going to get all of their check that they have allotted, like in their mind. They're like, okay, I love artists, but I can't spend my entire paycheck supporting my favorite artists. So I can only pick like 3 or 4 or 5 at this tier to support them. And what happens is, once they fill that up with their favorite artists, there's no room to fill that up with new artists that they discover without them having to cancel a subscription, let's say, in their mind, of another artist. Now, yeah, you think maybe people are like, oh, they love me so much, they'll just add me to their budget. But this is a bit of a different thing here. When you're dealing with subscription models, people consider subscription models in their budget differently than they do one-off purchases. So you have to be very, very careful, because even though it is just $1 a month, $2 a month, $3 a month, $5 a month, for example, $5 a month over 12 months equals $60. So people are going to be thinking in those kinds of terms. And so if they're paying $5 a month to 10 artists, they're paying $600 a year to fund artists and stuff, and they're going to start to think in that math very quickly. And so that's going to prevent artists from actually obtaining the exposure to the market enough to get enough people into their subscription models that the indie artists have a chance at this. So most likely what's going to happen is they're going to either integrate it directly through Spotify and give advantage to the label-backed artists at the very, very top so that they can eat up the market share by the time they actually give this technology to the independent artists. There's not going to be very many people left over. We're going to be basically fighting for the scraps of people who have limited budgets to support their favorite artists. Now, I get it. People are always becoming fans of music, and there's still an opportunity over time. But it's just an unfair advantage that's going to take place where there's a big chunk of the market that independent artists could utilize and could capture is going to be attempted to be at least siphoned off for just themselves. Now, the other alternative of this, and I think Daxton from Venture made a very good assessment in this, and we were thinking in the similar line, which is if UMG owns CD Baby, it's very likely that these services are going to be integrated not necessarily directly through the DSP, not directly through Spotify, but directly through the distribution company. And so what could happen is TuneCore, DistroKid, and CD Baby could start offering, hey, listen, if you pay us $10 a year, we'll allow you to do this. We'll get the necessary things that we can give to Spotify so that we can grant you access to this kind of feature. And what they're attempting to do is kind of have this Live Nation thing where it's like, you think you're going to get signed up with it, labels are not involved in this. I'm going to go sign up on CD Baby. Oh, cool. They have this feature that I can use on CD Baby where I can have artists give me monthly subscriptions. Or not artists, excuse me. Artists can get monthly subscriptions from their fans. Sign me up for CD Baby, which really is UMG. And this is just another way that labels are trying to market this kind of thing and take advantage of their leverage in the music business. Now, as grim as this all sounds, here's something I want to kind of hopefully communicate to you guys. Hopefully you guys find yourself really taking in the next thing I'm about to say to heart and taking it seriously. Spotify is not going to save you, okay? Like, it's just not going to happen. I can't imagine the stress that artists feel who are totally relying on Spotify for their income and have no other avenues that they've grown, and that's their only source of income. Yes, I do feel for them because Spotify changes like this, and it doesn't necessarily bend to you or my, your needs or my needs. They kind of tend to the label's needs and their own pockets needs, right? So we have to really look at this with sober eyes and understand that our focus sometimes as independent artists gets too fixated on Spotify. We're paying so much attention to the, how come we don't get paid enough? And I've done a whole video about, unfortunately, why the economics don't work with what artists are typically requesting. They're saying, well, they could afford to pay us more royalties. The reality is they can't. I've done the math on this and I've broke it down in that video. You can watch it after this, which is, fundamentally speaking, they would have to start charging people $20 a month, $30 a month, $40 a month just to get access to Spotify. And I can tell you right now, the market is not willing to pay that kind of money for Spotify. I actually went around and just asked a bunch of people. Some were like friends and family and relatives, and some people were just complete strangers. And I was asking them, quick question, if Spotify went up to, let's say, $60 a month, $50 a month, $40 a month, would you pay it? And each point, they're like, no. Heck, even the $16, $17 that they're paying now, you can tell I have a family plan. The $16 they're paying now for it or whatever is already pushing it. Now they're asking, like, you want people to get paid more. Well, Spotify's going to have to increase the monthly subscription. They can't just take a bigger loss. They're already negative. And people are like, no, that's bullcrap. I heard Spotify had a record-breaking revenue. I'm like, yes, they had record-breaking revenue, but that doesn't mean that their debt wasn't, and their liabilities and expenses wasn't bigger than that record-breaking revenue. It's not what you think it is. People think that Spotify is operating on some giant profit margin at the expense of independent artists. And the fact of the matter is, they are barely skating by the corporate rules because companies can remain unprofitable as long as they're growing. But if they start to stagnate, then the debt and expenses just absolutely eats them alive and the company goes under. And so that's probably, in my opinion, what's going to happen to Spotify. If not in the next 5 years, it'll happen in the next 10 years, 15 years. They'll try to delay it. Just like they tried to delay the 2008 crash as long as they could until there's no giving it up and then boom, it goes down. That's probably what's going to happen with Spotify. So instead of focusing on Spotify, that is, in my opinion, a ticking time bomb. And if you want to be optimistic about Spotify, it's the only place that you can actually market your music and get paid for it, probably other than YouTube. YouTube, you can figure out how to get to a YouTube partner position and start getting paid to promote your music. But Spotify is the only place, really, where, you know, by and large, the music just lives there and it pays you when people listen to it. YouTube is like the worst royalty payout when it comes down to song streams. It's like 0.0006 or something like that. There's an extra zero that's thrown into that equation. It's terrible. But anyway, what can we focus on? What can we focus on instead of Spotify, instead of stressing about all this stuff? There is a term that some people know, some people don't know, but the term is direct marketing, okay? Direct marketing, in my opinion, is the future for artists and musicians. And some people have conceptions of what that word means. Let me kind of elaborate what my vision of the future looks like with this kind of idea. Artists and musicians have the entrepreneurial education so that they can go out and they can promote directly to their fans in such a way that gets them to act now, right? Most artists and musicians, if we're being honest, they do this kind of standard stock promotion where we'll share clips of like maybe a past music video or a live performance and then maybe a photo from a live performance, and we're just kind of cycling those three pieces of content over and over and over and over again. But instead, what artists are slowly learning how to do, and you might be one of those people that's been watching these videos and staying up to date with this kind of stuff, which is you're learning more of those direct marketing skills. Little side note, I've actually got a direct marketing legend that I'm in the works with setting an interview up with for you guys. If I can nab this interview, you guys, your heads are going to explode. Some of you are going to be like, Dax, I don't know who this is. And then I'm going to tell you who it is, and you're going to go, it's really cool. I also have another interview. I'm going down an interview rabbit hole. There's more interviews to come. Okay, and February is going to be fun. So that's why it's February. February fun. They both have F's. You get it, right? No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Any idea? Direct marketing. Figuring out how you can create advertising that immediately attracts people who are into your style, that immediately builds that kind of rapport, because we're not just understanding what they like from a sonic level. We're not just like, oh, you like this kind of genre. Here's my, sound that kind of fits into this genre. It's not that simple. What you actually have to do is understand who your fans are. When I went out and I created advertising for my songs, where I was focusing less on trying to make myself or my song look cool as a song and more communicate with someone, the ads performed 10 times better. In fact, 10 times better. What does that mean? Well, in one example, I had a good performing ad for hard rock metal music, and it was like 30 cents to get someone to Spotify. They click the ad and then they click the landing page, hype edit link, and then it takes them over to Spotify. It was 30 cents, 32 cents roughly per click to get that to happen. Right? It's cost per result is the ad metric that you would call that. So the cost per result was 30 cents. A newer wave of ads that we've been running were the instead of it saying, the last ad said, POV, you just found your next favorite song in your playlist. Kind of stock, but I wanted to test it, and it tested the highest, so we kept it rolling. Instead of doing that, this kind of generic POV, you just found your next song that goes in your playlist or whatever, we did stuff that was more tying into the emotion and the significance that our song brings out, right? So the song that we wrote is actually kind of, I haven't really talked about it on this channel or anything, but it's sort of a historic thing. For example, imagine if Alice in Chains put out a song tomorrow that was a brand new Alice in Chains song you've never heard before. It had Lane Staley's voice on it. That's the original singer who passed away in the 90s. It had his original voice on it of a completely original piece, and then the new singer's voice was also on the song. So both of their voices were happening together. Well, that's what my song did. We took our old singer, Jesse, who passed away in 2018, and we had the song that we were writing together. And so what we did is we threw Gabe on the second verse and blended their voices in the choruses and created this brand new composition with both our current singer and our late lead singer posthumously. And I looked and researched and scraped the internet to find that this is the first song to really ever do that. And so what we did is we leveraged the emotion of that situation for the ads. And so the titles were like, when the song includes the singer who passed away, when the song makes you think about a friend that you've lost. Those are more emotional than POV, you just found your favorite song to add to your playlist. Like, it's a lot more emotional. And on top of that, instead of getting 30 cents cost per result, we're getting 3 cents cost per result, 5 cents cost per result. That's the kind of difference it can make whenever you actually have really good headlines, really good hooks on top of your advertising that's not just generic, but from a direct marketing perspective, you're really trying to tie into the emotions that someone's going to feel or that you're trying to get them to feel so you can attract the people that are going to be already ideal fans of your music. Okay? So this is just one perspective in advertising. There's another perspective of it in emails, right? How do we set up our marketing in our emails where we're communicating with them systemically? You know, we're communicating with them once a day whenever they first come into the list. I know some people just like, they freaked out when I said once a day. Don't worry. One, people won't be as annoyed as you think they were, or you think they will be. And two, you only do that when they very first join the list to prime them so that like, hey, you just joined the list. Here's some cool free gifts. Here's kind of the story about who we are as a group or as a project. And then maybe you make an offer. And then from there, you could be a little bit more like, I'll send them an email once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month. You know, you just kind of keep up in touch later after that. So don't freak out. But, you know, they go into, from a direct marketing perspective, though, you want those daily touches. Because I think one of the stats that we've heard is 16 touches are required nowadays in marketing. It may be starting to increase, but minimum 16 touches are needed before someone is like ready to buy from you, basically. And so when you're messaging them 2 times, 3 times for the welcome sequence, 4 times for the origin sequence, now we're getting in a place where it's like, okay, we got like 6 in here, we got 7. And all of a sudden now maybe you got 3 emails for the core product offer. Now you're into like 10 touches just in the email sequences. So if you can now reverse engineer that and say, I need 6 touches before you can get more than this obviously, but minimum 6 touches before they get into the email. Now you're starting to think like how many, again, that's a rough number. Don't think it's like a hard science. Like it has to be 16, but you get the idea. I'm thinking about from a direct marketing perspective, how many times do my fans need to see me, see what I'm about, me communicate with them so that I build that know, like, and trust factor. And so they actually not only like my music, but they understand the kind of mission that I'm on. And some people think, fans don't care about your story. They don't care about your story unless you can tie it to their story. That's a kind of a secret pro tip there, is when you're telling your origin stories, you don't just want to make it me the whole time. You want to figure out a way, for example, relate the feelings that you had throughout your story to an experience they can relate to. So for example, let's say you had a situation in your email list where you were talking about how you found a band or a group or an artist that inspired you to become a musician or made you fall in love with the song. What can you do to tie their experience that they care about more than your experience to your story? You can say something like, have you ever had a song that you heard and from the second you heard it, you were absolutely just sucked in and you knew you were going to be a fan forever? That is most likely a very common experience that these fans have had, right? They probably heard many songs that they heard for the first time and was just like, whoa, this is amazing. Right? And so that's how your story about something that happened to you where you saw an artist that made you want to become a guitar player, made you want to become a singer or whatever, you can tie that into their experience and say like, have you ever had a song that this happened to you? Oh, that's so good. So those emotions that you're feeling, that's what I felt. And I felt them so strongly that I decided I'm going to go learn how to do this. Right? And then you start telling your story. And if something, good happens along your journey, like, wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't you love it if something like that happened? You're right. And they're like, yeah, I would. And then something bad happens in your story. And you're like, oh, doesn't that stink? Well, how bad would it feel if this happened? And they're like, oh yeah, that would suck. You're getting them emotionally invested in the story as opposed to just being like, this one time I did this and then I did this and then we did this, and next email, and then we did this and then we did this. That's what most people's origin sequences in the very beginning without any kind of training, that's what it usually sounds like. And then we did this, ... and then there's more, and then we did this. Don't do that. Tie in what's happening in your experience through your origin story to emotions they can relate to. Ask them questions. How would that feel? Imagine if this happened to you. You know, those kind of questions help draw people into the stories and get them to care about it, because they're not just thinking, here's your story. They're like, wow, I felt the same things they're going through, just in my own different experience. Oh, I've had those feelings too. That's what we're trying to get them to, you know, feel. It's like, oh, I've had those feelings too. This artist kind of gets me because they've been through what I've been through, or they at least understand similar emotions to what I've been through. Maybe it's not the same experience that caused the emotion, but they understand the emotion. And that's sort of an interlinking point where the song itself, the song's meaning, and the way that you communicate with the fans about the song's meaning can really solidify that connection between fan and artist. So we have to think about this for a second. Even though the world is advancing into new technological realms, we tend to look at old strategies, and go, those things can't possibly work in the new modern era. But really what we find is that the things that do work in the modern era are adaptations, modulations of those core foundational principles that have always been around, right? And so that's kind of the things that I've noticed when I go look at advertising from musicians or businesses or whatever. I see the core foundational principles, but I see them being applied in new, modern, and innovative ways. And that's fundamentally what direct marketing is going to be for musicians, right? There are so many different ways of marketing and trying to attract the right person and get them into a position where they're giving you enough feedback that you know these are fans who are willing to buy from me and these are fans who are not willing to buy from me. And we start to separate those people out. Because ultimately, you want to find that group of people that are willing to buy things from you, that are willing to support you. Because some people feel weird about that idea. Like, yes, people are going to buy your stuff, right? People are going to want to buy. That's just, we have to be okay with accepting that. I feel like a lot of artists kind of struggle with that, of like, not just asking for money from their fans, but also accepting money from their fans. I'll tell you, I've been put in positions where I've had no choice. I was playing a gig in Hayes, Kansas, and a dude came up and gave me a $200 tip on Vimeo. And not Vimeo, Venmo. Sorry, Vimeo's a video hosting company. On Venmo. And I was like, okay, cool, man. How many shirts do you want? Like, he's like, I don't want anything. And we're like, what? And he's like, yeah, like, I just loved y'all's set so much, and I want you guys to succeed, and I hope this helps you succeed. We had no choice but to just like accept this compliment and accept this money. What am I gonna do? Send it back and like make them pay a fee to down? Like, no, we're gonna take it. And we're gonna be like, thank you so much. That means the world. Like, we're so glad that we put on a set that was good enough and connected with you enough that you felt the need to do that. And that's all they asked, was just to like, hey, keep on doing what you're doing. I hope this helps you guys get to the next spot and helps you guys on your journey to make more music like this. And I was just like, wow, I didn't have to work for that. I didn't have to sit there and go, please, will you please give me a tip and buy something from me? I didn't have to do that, right? And no, neither do you, right? So when it comes to selling, it's about communicating our value, just like it's about showing value. Show the value the same way you show value whenever you play a gig in front of somebody. You're showing your value to them. But when it comes to selling, all of a sudden we want to withhold our value and we want to hold it in a corner and go, maybe, you might like it, kind of. I don't want to tell you about it unless you beg and plead. Like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to be entrepreneurial musicians. I want you to say that. I'm an entrepreneurial musician. I am not afraid to sell things. Please say that with me. Watch this and say it again and again and again. I am not afraid to sell things, because ultimately I've sold t-shirts to families, and then I get pictures of that signed t-shirt a year and a half later of like, thank you guys for making this night so special for us. Like, this still sits up on our wall and it's a special memory for us. Those kind of things, it's like, if I'd had some weird apprehension about them buying a t-shirt and like talk them out of it, they wouldn't have this thing that they hold on to and go, wow, this reminds us of a great memory. And that's what you help create at gigs. That's what you help create whenever they hear your song for the first time. That's what you help create when you communicate something that shows you that you connect with them, like you understand them on a certain level, whether that's through the music or the emails. Those are the kind of things that we need to not be afraid of. We need to not be afraid to say like, hey, I've got this cool thing of value. And if you're like into our music, you're really going to want this. But if you're not, no big deal. No harm, no foul. You don't need to say, if you don't buy this, you're a terrible person. No. But we communicate to the people who want to buy and give them something that allows them to support us. Like I remember when we very first did a VIP day with my band, I had to freaking beg and plead for them. Guys, let's try this. I know we're not stadium bands or theater bands, but let's try it. And we made an additional like $70 per VIP ticket. And I think we sold like 8 or 7 VIP tickets. So we wouldn't have had that opportunity to make that extra revenue if we had, I don't know if we're valuable enough to do a VIP. No, let's just offer it. And then someone who saw the value in us was like, I will gladly pay that. And so that's the biggest problem is in the direct marketing mindset that musicians need to develop is they need to say like, I need to have offers for fans to buy no matter what level of income that they're at. So whenever you create a super expensive offer, whether that's like I call it super expensive, like $100, $500, $1,000, whatever it is. People think like that means every single person I talk to, I'm going to try to get them to buy this thing. It's like, no. We didn't try to get every single solitary soul to buy our VIP tickets. We just said, hey, we have this available if you want to experience a VIP experience at your next show. Then the people who saw the value were like, yes, I will gladly do that, 100%. And so it's not about trying to convince anybody to buy anything. Offer it up. And those who have the ability to buy it and the desire to buy it, if you've communicated properly, will desire and will buy it. You know what I'm saying? But if we hold it back and we go, oh, I don't know, I don't want to sell anything because I'm afraid they're going to look at me like a cheap huckster in a book. Those are just limiting beliefs that you think, but the fans aren't thinking. Maybe one fan every now and then. I've had fans unsubscribe from my band's list because they're like, this is spammy content. Because we were like, hey guys, happy Black Friday. Would you guys like a cool t-shirt? They're like, this is spammy. Then go. If this was Hot Fuzz, it'd be like, jog on. You know what I'm saying? Like, just go. I don't care. Like, no harm, no foul. I don't care. Like, I don't care. They're bad people. No, that's not aligned with them. They don't like us as much as the people who need to be on our email list like us. So get them out of there, right? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be upset that someone is leaving somewhere they don't want to be. But the people who want to be there, I want to cultivate that so that when I make an offer, the people who are like, yeah, are in the email list. And the people who are all like easily offended and, like, oh, someone tried to sell me something. Oh, dear Lord, the humanity, the reefer madness, those people can go. And, like, I recommend that you cultivate that kind of mentality, not super militantly, where you're like, if you don't buy anything, then F off. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you approach it from this perspective of like, here's what I have to offer. I'm not pulling punches. I'm not sitting there saying, here's what I have to offer. If you guys want it, it's no big deal. Like, I don't want it. Like, I'm just saying like, here it is. And those who take it will take it. And those who don't, won't. And then you just move on to the next offer or the next thing that you're communicating. So it's a nice balance. I'm kind of focusing just on the business side of this for the moment because that's what we're talking about. But when it comes down to it, you got to figure out how to communicate and sell to your audience. That's the core underlying thing here. And yes, it would be great if we could just make all of our music, our income just from Spotify. But do we really want to put the reliability of our income into the hands of a big corporation like Spotify who can be fickle and can change their mind at any second and do things that are not in our best interest, but our music's on their platform? So is that really who we want to put our faith in, or do we want to put our faith in ourselves? You guys may have heard this quote before, but it's like, does a bird trust the branch or its wings when it lands on the branch? It trusts its wings. Not just, it's like, okay, I'm going to sit on this branch. Oh, the branch is gone. Well, I'm just going to fly away. That's how we need to be when it comes to Spotify. Okay, I'll just put my music on Spotify. I'll put my music on Spotify, and as soon as Spotify starts going bankrupt, we'll go, oh, okay, and we'll float away. But the idea that we're going to rely on Spotify to be the only pillar of our music business is just not feasible, in my opinion, for most artists. Because even if you get your streams up to a relatively good point, that income can be good. If you can get it up to like $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, that's not bad. Right? That's at least a good place to start. You can start paying your bills off with that. But how you get to that next level of income, how you get to the 5K, the 10K and above without having to drastically increase the volume that you're doing over here on Spotify is going to come through these direct marketing strategies, selling your fan club, selling your merchandise. And here's the cool thing about an offer. We can do streaming 2.0 on our own. We can do bad all by ourselves. No, I'm just kidding. We can figure out how to create a subscription model with our fans directly. I'm telling you, it's as easy as getting a free Stripe account, creating a product that is a monthly subscription, creating a little payment link, and then sending that payment link via email or however to your fans. And so when they subscribe, the money comes out every single month because it's set up as a recurring payment. It's as simple as that. Now, what do we sell? How do we design the landing page? And how do we, all that stuff, there's a little bit more technical aspect to it. But as far as like the A to B, why are we like relying on UMG or Spotify to hold the subscription gem in their hands to maybe we'll give it to the independent artist, maybe we won't. Let's just go take that for ourselves now. We don't have to wait for Spotify to figure out what the F it's going to do. We can go do that today. We can go offer $1 a month fan club where every single month for $1, they get access to like a private Zoom or something that no one else gets access to, where you do like Q&As and performances or something like that. You could do that for $2, $3, $5 a month. I've had people in our fan club pay us as high as $17 a month. I had our one client pay $35 a month. So there are people who are willing to support independent musicians, but we've got to communicate with them in a way that actually shows our value, and we're actually able to offer them things that will be of value to us as well, if they're willing to buy and if they can afford it. And if they can't or they're not, no hard feelings, okay? So I hope you guys learned a lot in today's video about not focusing on Spotify and all the crazy stuff that they keep promising us that's going to be the new revolution to help the artists, blah, 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 blah. And focus on the strategies that have been helping musicians and businesses, broadly speaking, throughout time. That's direct marketing, okay? Because even guys like Franz Liszt and Mozart were fundamentally entrepreneurs that were leveraging things like scarcity and urgency, right? These things have been around forever and they will continue to be around forever. It's just how they're applied that will change. So if you got some value and some perspective from today's video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, the like button, notification bell, all that kind of good, YouTube-y stuff. And if you'd like some one-on-one help implementing direct marketing strategies into your music business, there's a link in the description to apply to work with us. You can hop on a free coaching call to really see if it's a good fit. If that's a good fit for you, check out the link in the description. If not, no worries. I'll see you guys in another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.